Hi, welcome to the Libertarian Alternative. My name is Mark Selzer, and the Libertarian Alternative is an educational television show brought to your community by the Libertarian Party. Today's guest is David Knott of the Reason Foundation, and you are the director, executive director, or the president of the Reason Foundation. Now, explain quickly to our viewers what the Reason Foundation is and what does it do?
The Reason Foundation is committed to libertarian ideas, and we do journalism and public policy research to help inform journalists, policymakers, and opinion leaders and get them to use more of these ideas.
Okay, so this is done by sending out, we have a magazine, which is another wing of the Reason Foundation, and they have a magazine called Reason that sits on a newsstand, probably.
You can see it at Borders, Barnes & Noble, Reason Magazine, Magazine of Free Minds and Free Markets.
And they have a website, and then, of course, your website is reason.org,
right,
which is a nonprofit educational 501c3 organization.
Right.
And you issue policy papers that you attempt to and do have published in newspapers around the country, periodicals.
We produce our own research, and we also write for publication in newspapers.
Websites.
All of we like to be everywhere.
Email. Yes. And you also send these published reports to politicians, Congress, senators, people in office to try to influence them. Here's the issue, and here's some concrete research that really shows where we should go on this.
Absolutely. And just recently, our transportation director was invited to Capitol Hill to testify on airport security and how it's poorly done and could be better. And our environmental correspondent went and testified on environmental policy. So we engage the policy process as well.
I believe I saw the article on transportation in a reference to Reason magazine and some research you had done, or the Reason Public Policy Institute on the cover, on the front page, lead story in the LA Times a while ago, and that was Mr. Robert Poole, who was the founder of the Reason Foundation. So now today we wanted to talk about medical marijuana, medical cannabis. Some people do not like the term marijuana because of the stigma associated with it, but a lot of people, more and more Americans, are finding that this has health benefits to them, which is in contrast to the Congress of the United States, which I believe only has one doctor in it who has decided that it has no medical benefits, which also runs in the face of the medical community, who as an FDA-approved drug called Marinol, which has the active ingredient from marijuana in it, which I believe is called tetrahydrocannabinol, and that is the active ingredient both in marijuana and in this drug called Marinol, which is sometimes used as a substitute for people using medical marijuana who have legally been restrained from using it.
Right.
So where is the research? Where can you find the research showing that medical marijuana actually has medical benefits? Where can you find that?
The place I would start would be the 1999 report by the Institute of Medicine, commissioned by the Office of National Drug Control Policy. So it's the government's own publication that is a survey of the literature and the science on medical cannabis. And the summary of that report is fairly specific as to levels of proof about purported benefits from using medical cannabis. So it says in the obvious category, relief for nausea for people with AIDS and cancer, so going through chemotherapy, and spasticity for multiple sclerosis, as well as glaucoma. So that would be in the first category where there's the most evidence of cannabis being useful as medicine. And then it goes to there are indications that cannabis would be useful as medicine for things like pain relief and like aspirin. And in fact, there's evidence that's mounting that the pain relief component of cannabis is one of the unsung medical benefits. So the place I would start for the government's own rendering on this subject would be that Institute of Medicine report. There are more recent reports. The best research on marijuana as a medicine is being done in Israel and other countries where they don't have the same restrictions that we do here. This fall there was an issue of Science devoted to the breakthroughs that they've had on understanding chemically what's going on with marijuana in the brain when and the different levels and how it's working with receptors and the various brain function. So what's going on with the chemistry of the drug?
But let me be the devil's advocate here. There seems to be a large number of people that feel this is all a hoax, or this is something that we shouldn't allow because it would just be used to legalize marijuana and is being used by people who are insincere. Anyone can go and get a prescription for a doctor from any imaginary illness and just use marijuana, and then essentially what you'd have is a legalization of marijuana.
Right. The Onion did a great spoof on that, where they said they had interviews with Man on the Street, and there was a picture of a young girl, and she said, "I need medical marijuana for my Doritos aversion syndrome." So, of course, with any system, you're going to have abuses. You have people park in the blue spaces with their blue cards that clearly have no handicap. I mean, anytime you create a system, you're going to have abuses. To me, the question is, can you actually create a regime that more or less regulates the proper use of a substance? And I think that the arguments that the medical marijuana community are making are that doctors ought to be the gatekeepers for the appropriate use of medicine, and that is between the doctor and their patient in a doctor-patient relationship. So, given that there's evidence of the medical benefits of cannabis, as documented by the government's own reports, why not allow the medical community the freedom to work with their constituents in the best way they see fit? And there are something like 74 polls on the question of medical marijuana. There's a fairly good website called medicalmarijuanaprocon.org, and it lists the 74 polls. And in every case, Americans overwhelmingly support medical use of marijuana.
And to talk about the doctors and to even look at it in a wider spectrum, there have been criticisms of the drug war as being, in general, just drugs being illegal in general, is that the people that are wealthy, if they need some kind of drug to change if they're feeling down, need something to perk them up, if they're feeling depressed, they can go to a doctor and have something prescribed. And then the people of lower economies need to go to the guy on the street to find some kind of drug to medicate themselves. So I guess there's a lot of issues there. There's a whole bag of worms that I wanted to talk about, but not necessarily go there.
Well, let me go there then. I attended a symposium at the USC Medical School, and there was a panel with patients of medical cannabis, and a guy in a wheelchair told a story of trying to buy medicine on the street and how the advantage that was taken of him because he's in a wheelchair, and the importance to him of having dispensaries and co-ops and a well-functioning system and access for him to the medicine that works for him under the care of his doctor. And when you see a case like that and hear a story like that, it's pretty hard to argue, well, if everybody can't have safer access, then he shouldn't either. I mean, with a pretty clear medical need, I mean, if the subject is medical cannabis, and if it is in fact useful as medicine, as the government asserts, then why not work to create the